This is The Great Game or What with the Hall of Famer Tim Kirkshin. I'm his son, Jeff Kirkshin, and here we are, Dad, another episode and another snowstorm that we had to shovel out of right before recording.
Right. How long did you shovel this morning, Jeff?
I did end up helping a couple of neighbors, so I ended up being out there a couple hours just because I was the first one in my neighborhood to get done. And then I saw some other people out there struggling, so I walked around with my shovel. I would say I was out there. Then McKinley came out, wanted to have a snowball fight, and then she wanted to drive in her bike and her car once I got everything cleaned off. So I was there for 2.5 hours, easy.
Right. It took me 2 hours to do our driveway. Of course, our driveway is longer than your driveway. Our driveway is longer than certain runways at Washington Reagan Airport. So I was out there for 2 hours and I'm feeling good. You fell asleep, took a nap and fell asleep today. Did I hear that properly?
Yeah, you had to call me because we had a set time for recording, and all of a sudden my phone is buzzing, and I look at it, and it's 5 minutes past our allotted recording time, and I have fallen asleep in my daughter's bed during her nap time. And keep in mind, I was so tired, Dad, that I looked at the clock, and I had 30 minutes. I said, oh, I'm fine. I'm good. I'll be fine. I won't fall back asleep. And all of a sudden, it's 35 minutes later, and I have been asleep for 35 minutes. And you called me, and I apologize. I don't like being late for things.
Jeff, it's okay.
But, yeah, I'm late.
When you were a kid, I would lie down next to you on your bed like every night to make sure that you got to sleep because you had such a difficult time. And famously, Jeff, you got really quiet, and I thought, great, I've got it. This is it. He's asleep. He's not going to say it. He's asleep. And then you looked at me. You're like 4 years old and said, my toe hurts. What did that mean? My toe hurts? It was just another stalling tactic by 4-year-old Jeff Kirkshin, and now you're 32 and you're still taking naps.
My toe still hurts.
Right, but yes, you have a bad foot. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, but that's the dreaded psoriatic arthritis that I was just diagnosed with at age 32. Right. So, I feel like I'm 32 inside, but I walk like I'm 52. So the new medication, Dad, is hopefully gonna make me feel a little bit better. But I want you, Dad, I'm going to sound like you here. Are you ready? Jeff, I want you to ask me about my hat.
Yeah.
Dad, I want you to ask me about my hat.
What is that? The Polar Express? Is that the Tom? No, what does that say? Polar Express is Tom Hanks, who played like everyone in it.
Tom Hanks Christmas movie.
Right, it was great. Yeah.
No, this is the Polar Plunge. This past weekend, the Special Olympics Pennsylvania hosted, and Polar Plunges across the country, of course. It's for the Special Olympics and those incredible athletes. And what we did was we had pools set up outside Citizens Bank Park in South Philadelphia. Freezing cold. Me and a couple of my coworkers were hosting the event. And I jumped into a pool filled with water in the middle of the winter.
Now, what were you wearing, Jeff? Did you have a sweatsuit on, a swimsuit, regular clothes? What did you have?
Some people, they dress up. They have, cool tutus or outfits, or they wear onesies with animals on them or something. I just wore a bathing suit and a long sleeve shirt, and I jumped in. And, Dad, you know me in water. We don't exactly get along. Okay, I didn't learn how to swim until I was 15 years old. That's a story for another time. And I don't even like being in water. If my head goes under, I end up with an ear infection anyway. The point is, I did it because these brave, incredible Special Olympics athletes are doing it too. And I said, I got to do it. I got to support the cause. And I jumped in, and the air temperature outside, Dad, was like 45 degrees.
Oh, that's okay. All right. 25, 15, that's different. You got lucky, right? 45 was not bad, right?
We had the one decent day in like a month and a half in the Philadelphia area, and it happened to be the day of the Polar Plunge. And I don't know if I would have done it if it was 25 out there. It was bad, but we did it, and it was a great time.
How long were you in the water?
I mean, about as fast as it takes for the pitch to be delivered from the pitcher.
Oh, so you jumped in, you did your job, and got right back out.
Oh, I jumped in, Dad, and I was running towards the stairs of the pool immediately. It
All
was
right.
not a it was not a here I am splashing around.
I'm proud of you for doing something for such a good cause. And we all know you're not very good in the water. You're not very good on land either, Jeff, but the water really bothers you. And I still don't understand how you could have flown in a jet that was going like 1,000 miles an hour and you're not afraid of heights and all this other stuff, but you just have trouble in the water. I don't blame you. We'll have to get that fixed when you're, maybe 50 years old or something.
Yeah, you're talking. Well, I had a chance to go on a U.S. Navy Blue Angel back in my time in Cleveland, Ohio. They took a media member up before the Cleveland Air Show, and yeah, that was wouldn't do it again. And
Right.
the reason why is I would want somebody else to have that opportunity
Right.
because it was so incredible, so invigorating, but also so scary and so difficult. You're fighting the laws of nature while you're up there,
Right.
but it was absolutely amazing.
All right. Well, speaking of amazing, Jeff, I'm going to spring training on Thursday. I'm usually the first guy in spring training. This year, I'm going to be the last guy in spring training, but not the
Yeah.
point. At least I'm going. And 45 years ago was my first spring training. At the 1982 Rangers, I covered them. I went in 81, but it really didn't count. 82 really counted because it was my first as a full-time beat writer. So I get to Pompano Beach, Florida. And Jeff, I haven't traveled a whole lot at this point. So I'm not sure where. I've never been to Pompano Beach. All sorts of things are going on. I look on a map back when we used to look at maps to figure out how to get places. And it said down in the right-hand corner, Municipal Stadium, home of the Washington Senators. They had moved 10 years earlier to Texas, and they were still on the map as the Washington Senators. So I'm thinking right away, maybe the Rangers are not a big deal here in Pompano. And boy, did I ever find that out, because the stadium, as quaint as it was tiny. They only had one extra field, and it was like a half field, like a little field with the left field fence was about 120 feet away. It was, you just took infield there. And this is a terrible story, Jeff, but I'm going to tell you anyway, and I'm going to leave the guy's name out. One day on that side field, one of the Rangers pitchers looked up in the air and there was a seagull flying, and he's doing a pitching drill in the stretch. Now, please, I don't want to offend anyone here. I just want to tell a story. And he looks and he says to everyone who cared to listen, I'm going to wheel. And instead of throwing it to second base in a pickoff drill, he said, I'm going to hit that seagull. So he spun, he threw it, he threw the ball. This is awful. I can't believe I'm telling this. He hit the seagull, and the seagull landed like right next to second base. It was awful. And Charlie Huff, Charlie Huff, one of the funniest people in the world, just looked at us and said, that's what happens when you don't wear a helmet. So we had a dead seagull on the field in spring training 1982. Those are just a few things that happened there. I've told you, let's see if you can remember the Mickey Rivers story that I told you from spring training. Mickey Rivers making $450,000 a year. The everyday center fielder for the Rangers asked me what? 3 weeks into spring training.
He asked you for what, $20,000?
$2,000. He asked if he could borrow 2,000. I had to say, Mick, I'm making $13,000 a year. I don't have $2,000 to my entire name. And Buddy Bell, who was the best player on that team, just kind of whispered to me, Tim, like new guy on the beat, don't ever loan Mickey any money because you're never going to
see it again.
So, yes. That was a great spring for me. I got to know Al Oliver really well, and they traded Al Oliver at the end of spring training to the Expos. And just to show you how the beat worked, I broke that story, but I really didn't break it because Randy Galloway, the great Randy Galloway, who I followed on the beat, he broke the story. He gave me the story, and it went under my byline in the Dallas Morning News. So my first breaking story as a beat guy at the morning news was furnished by Randy Galloway, one of the great beat writers of all time. So I had, and at the end of that spring training, Jeff, the Rangers traded Ron Darling, who was a guest of ours last year on the podcast. Really good pitcher, won a World Series with the Mets in 1986, and Walt Terrell, also a very good pitcher. Traded both of them for Lee Mazzilli right at the end of spring training because they needed a left fielder. So it turned out to be a really bad trade for the Rangers. But I remember in reporting that story, I called looking for Joe Klein, who was the farm director, and I got his assistant, and I said, I'm looking for Joe. Is he there? And the assistant said, no, Joe is dead. He jumped off the roof of the Holiday Inn after hearing about the trade. So just shows you how bad a deal that was. So that was my first spring training as an everyday beat writer, 1982, a completely different world than the one we live in today.
Well, Dad, I know we're approaching March Madness, but one of my favorite spring training stories of all time was when we were in Arizona and we watched your alma mater, University of Maryland, win the national championship. And that was during a spring training trip. Is that right?
Yes,
do you remember that?
We were in Arizona and we watched it.
We were in a hotel room with a dinky TV and we watched that game.
Right.
And I remember it because of the time change as well. The game was a little bit earlier, so us kids were able to stay up and actually watch it. And your team, your alma mater, the Terps, win. And that was with, oh my gosh, Steve Blake was on that team. Right. What a great, it was such a fun experience. Going to these baseball games and running home in order to see this game with you, and we got to watch it with you. It was great. Right.
And Juan Dixon made the big three-pointer that broke that game open, and there was plenty of time on the shot clock, and it was one of those things like, should you be shooting it this early? And he just drills a three and wins the game. So it was, that was great. Wow. A good memory, Jeff. That might have been your first spring training, and so this is my 41st, and that was your first. Very good.
All right, Dad, well, let's jump into the takeaways right now. What's going on across Major League Baseball? Obviously, we're in spring training, but there's some big news we got to address right up front.
Bill Mazeroski died. One of the great people I've ever met in the game. I believe he's the greatest defensive second baseman of all time. Nobody, Jeff, made the double play, the turn from second base, the pivot from second base better than Bill Mazeroski. He's got those short, stubby, really strong legs, and he would stand right on top of the bag. And anyone who wanted to slide into him, he would say, go ahead, but I'm not moving. And he didn't. Davey Johnson ended up being a really good second baseman in his day. And like so many others, they watched Bill Mazeroski play second base and they patterned themselves after him. They watched him and said, that's who I want to be. And he's a Hall of Famer, of course. His offensive numbers are not overwhelming, but Jeff, it's really important to remember what the 1960s was like offensively, okay? You look at Bill Mazeroski's numbers, they don't blow you away, but back then, those numbers as the second baseman were above average, but you take that and then you just include the defense. That's how he's a Hall of Famer. And I believe, Jeff, he hit the biggest home run in Major League history. Now, we're not going to include Hank Aaron here because there was so much more involved there in the passing of Babe Ruth, racism, hatred, all that. Hank Aaron is in a different category. But I think Bill Mazeroski's Game 7 leadoff home run against the Yankees to win that game 10-9 is the biggest home run in Major League history. Because there have only been 2 walk-off homers in the 6th game or 7th game of a World Series. Joe Carter in 93, but that was in Game 6, and this was in Game 7. And the Pirates, who just got pounded in their 3 losses in that series, came back to win and beat the Yankees 10-9. Let's see if you can remember, Jeff, the distinct.
Didn't the Pirates get massively
Oh,
outscored in that series and still
Yeah, I
won?
used to know it by heart, but yeah, they got outscored by like 30 runs in 7 games, and they still won the World Series, just proving again you can win a game 14-0, 15-0. It doesn't matter. You got to win the next day. So yeah, so that was
55-27, Dad. That was the series, 1960, and they still won,
right.
having been outscored by almost 30 runs.
Let's see how good your memory is, Jeff. The 10-9 final in Game 7. Among other things, what was the distinction of that game? 10-9. I've told you this before. There was something.
It was. Well, okay. I do remember that the Pirates, of all 4 games they won each one by 1 or 2. No.
I'm just talking about Game 7, Jeff. I think this is important still after all these years. 0 strikeouts.
Well,
0 strikeouts.
I mean, it's the only.
No, that's the distinction. 0 strikeouts in Game 7.
Oh, that's right.
Of the World Series. You know, Jeff, we average 18 strikeouts per game now. I've covered postseason games where there were 30 strikeouts in the game.
Yeah,
0.
Dad, it feels like we average 18 strikeouts an inning.
Yeah,
these days,
yeah. Look, the strikeout rate is out of control. The pitching we see today, the stuff is just ridiculous. So, yeah, but that was a historic series. Arguably, that's the greatest game in the history of the World Series. I think it's the biggest home run in Major League history, and it was hit by Bill Mazeroski, who's, again, I met him a bunch of times, loved every second I was with him, really down-to-earth kind of guy. And if you remember, Jeff, at his Hall of Fame speech, I think he only lasted about 3 minutes and 30 seconds because he said a bunch of times, I'm not going to get through this, because he was so overcome by emotion that he just started crying. He just started sobbing. So if anyone ever wonders like how important the Hall of Fame is to these players, go listen to that speech sometime. He was so overwhelmed, he couldn't even finish it. And no one had a problem with that because that's how important it was for Bill Mazeroski to make it to Cooperstown.
Well, Dad, in spirit of the late great, why not bring back an old Team Tim that he's a part of?
Yeah, we've done this before. So if anyone complains that, hey, I've heard this list before, this Team Tim before, it's okay. We're going to do it again as a tribute to Bill Mazeroski.
Well, let the record show, Dad. I think of any podcast and any group of people, our listeners, members of our family, complain the least. I have never experienced, in years of radio, working for radio stations across the country, experience people as kind and as warm-hearted as the people who listen to our show. Seriously, Dad. It's incredible how sweet the messages we get at greatgamerwhat.com. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, the messages we get are just amazing.
Yeah, they're really kind-hearted, and sorry, Jeff, that's what we're trying to get at here. We laugh and we learn on this podcast. There's so much hatred in the world. There's no reason to be spewing it here when it's out there everywhere else. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed. Absolutely.
All right, Jeff, this is my Team Tim. My greatest defensive players at each position. I say this every time. This is not the correct list. This is not the right list. This is my list. If you have a better list than I do, I'd love to hear it. Johnny Bench is the greatest defensive catcher of all time for me. Keith Hernandez is the first baseman, and we had Johnny and Keith as our guests, right? Last year. How cool is that?
We're knocking out people on this list, one after another.
Bill Mazeroski at second, Brooks Robinson at third, 16 Gold Gloves. Ozzie Smith is the shortstop, and I think you could make the case that he is the greatest defensive player of all time at any position, given the importance and the degree of difficulty of the position of shortstop. So Ozzie's our shortstop. Carly Yastrzemski is our left fielder. I grew up watching him play, not every day, but we saw enough of him. Nobody played the wall better than him. He was fabulous. Willie Mays is the greatest center fielder of all time for me. And I saw him play, maybe not in his prime, but I saw enough of him to say I've never seen anyone play center field like him. And Roberto Clemente is our right fielder. And our pitcher is Greg Maddux, who, in a close vote over Jim Cott, I think Maddux won 16 Gold Gloves. And I'll never forget this story, Jeff. Walt Weiss played with Greg Maddux in Atlanta. Walt Weiss was the shortstop on the Braves for at least a time when Maddux was there. So what he told me was when Maddux would throw to home plate, he never threw a ball straight unless he really wanted to. He had natural movement on everything because that's what Greg Maddux could do better than anyone. But on the 1-6-3 double play where the pitcher catches it and fires it to the shortstop, who fires it to the first baseman, Walt Weiss told me Greg Maddux threw the greatest four-seamer, which is, of course, a straight ball right to the shortstop, better than any pitcher he's ever seen. So pitches to the plate, he had natural movement on it. He made it move the way he wanted. But when he caught a ball and knew I have to throw to a base, he threw a perfect four-seam strike. That's how great Greg Maddux was as a fielding pitcher.
Brooks Robinson had 16. Greg Maddux, 18.
18.
Wow. I did a quick fact check for you, Dad, just to make sure you had that right. You're absolutely right. And we just talked about Greg Maddux's glove and how huge it was, how big it was. And when you put it up in comparison to our little A2000s, it's a big difference.
Right. Yeah, he was really good, Jeff. And he once yelled at one of his second basemen for playing too much up the middle. And a ball got through into the outfield to the second baseman's left, okay? Meaning the guy was shading up the middle a little bit too much. And when the ball went through, Maddux was furious. And he yelled at his own second baseman, "I told you I got anything up the middle," which allowed the second baseman and the shortstop to play in different areas because Maddux could cover so much ground on balls hit up the middle. That's how good he was.
All right, Dad, on this date in baseball history, what do you have?
All right, on this date, Eddie Murray was born in 1956. I covered Eddie Murray with the Orioles. He's one of the greatest players I've ever covered, one of the greatest switch hitters, maybe the second greatest switch hitter of all time. I think I told you this, Jeff. Eddie didn't like a lot of sports writers, and that included me for a long time. That's hardly the point. I get on the airplane to go to spring training in 1986. And Richard Justice, who was with the Washington Post, I was with the Baltimore Sun, he introduces me on the plane to Floyd Rayford, who is a member of the Orioles. And I haven't met Floyd yet because I've been covering the Rangers for 4 years, and now I'm covering the Orioles. So Richard says, "Tim, this is Floyd Rayford. Floyd, this is Tim. He's going to be covering the team." And Floyd Rayford looks at me, Jeff, and he goes, "Eddie's going to hate you." And I said, "Why?" He goes, your head's too big for the rest of your body. And I went,
"Stop it."
I mean, I have a tiny little body, but I got a pretty small head too. So I actually went into the bathroom on the airplane just to take a look at my head because I just had a guy tell me my head is too big for the rest of my body. And yes, Eddie did hate me for several years, but we patched it up. It's all good. It's not all good, but yes, everything's good now. Happy birthday to Eddie Murray, born on this date in 1956.
Now, maybe if he said your nose is a little too big for your body, because you and I both, big noses, little guys.
When I lean back like this, my nose looks like a two-car garage, and it's always been that way. All right, that's really bad. Okay, also birthday, Jeff, 1960, Nick Saski. He was a good hitter, Jeff, played for a bunch of teams. And, I wrote a book. My third book is called I'm Fascinated by Sacrifice Flies. Nick Saski in 1989, get this, drove in 108 runs and did not have a sacrifice fly. Do you find that almost impossible to believe? 108
you
RBIs,
have to try at that
zero
point.
sacrifice flies.
That's
The record
incredible.
is Chili
Who would?
Davis had 112 RBIs in a season, 1993, without a sacrifice fly. So, the Eddie Murrays of the world. By the way, Eddie Murray, last I looked, holds the record for most sacrifice flies. I think it's 128 in Major League history, and he never led the league in any season in sacrifice flies. How weird is that? He has the most
That is
ever, at least the
crazy.
last I checked. I haven't checked in a couple of years. He had the most ever, but he never led the league in sacrifice flies in any season. How weird is that?
We have a lot of seam heads, Dad, who listen to this show. Maybe I could give a little assignment, right? Here's my assignment, right? Why don't we do who has the most of all time X who never led the league in it?
All right, we'll come up with some possibilities for next week, okay?
And the list might be one other thing. I don't know, but I'll put a challenge out there to the seam heads, to members of the family that listen to Is This a Great Game or What? Let us know. You can message us, greatgameorwhat.com. We're always responding to your messages right there on the website. We'll make it really easy. So the assignment again is find a record, somebody who all time holds the record for the most somethings, but never led the league in that category.
Right.
Could be cool.
Pretty cool. All right, we'll try that next week. Okay, happy birthday to Bronson Arroyo. Now let's see if you know who Bronson Arroyo is, Jeff, because you messed up his name. You screwed this up badly, like 6 months ago. You remember?
Yeah, and I can't remember who I mistaken him for, but he's the former Red Sox pitcher with the cornrows.
Yes.
And had the run-in with Alex Rodriguez at first base in the ALCS,
Jeff,
correct me?
Jeff, that's it. You got it. But what is the distinction of Bronson Arroyo? What is he also really, really good at?
He's a great musician.
Yes. So
I know that,
Well, he famously told me once, I played with Eddie Vedder and I played with Ozzie Smith. I can die a happy man.
Wow.
So, Jeff, who's more talented, Ozzie Smith or Eddie Vedder? Is that an impossible question? Is that the dumbest question ever?
Dad, I remember our very first podcast, you asked me, who's the Mike Trout of the music world, right? And I said Ed Sheeran, and you acted like I just insulted your mother. And I said, Dad, I know music, right? Ed Sheeran, he writes, and at the time he's kind of on a hiatus right now. He's not touring, he's not making music, but you got all Heidi and you said, no, he's not. And I said, well, then who is it? And you said, I don't know.
All right. I don't know anything about music, Jeff, but I did remember.
It's hard to compare those
Ed
two
Sheeran
things,
and Mike Trout in his prime. I found that very interesting. Also born on this date, Jeff, I love this, Dennis Tankersley pitched in the major leagues for a few years. So get this, Jeff. He won his first major league game, and he's a pitcher. Hit his first major league home run in the same game. He was a really good hitting pitcher.
Wow.
And get this, he never won another game and never hit another homer in his career. Now, he didn't pitch very long. I think his career record was 1-10. That's hardly the point. He had a day where he got his first major league win, hit his first major league homer, and before or after, never won a game and never hit a homer. Pretty weird, right?
Best day of his life, never to be repeated again.
Right. Oh. And sad news, Jeff. On this date in 1990, Tony Conigliaro died. You're way too young to understand what Tony C was like in the 60s. He hit 100 home runs by like age 22 for the Red Sox. He was a star. Then he got hit in the face by a pitch from Jack Hamilton. And he came back and he played more, but he couldn't see out of his front eye anymore. And that's ultimately the reason that he had to retire, is he couldn't see out of his front eye. And, my favorite story that I've ever written in my life, Jeff, is a story about fear of the ball, because everyone has a fear of the ball. Even big leaguers have a fear of the ball. The difference is they're courageous enough and disciplined enough to get through it, where the rest of us who get hit in the head say that's enough of that. But
That's it. I'm
in
done.
doing that story, Jeff, I'll never forget. I talked to Ken Harrelson, Hawk Harrelson, really good player in his time, led the league in RBIs one year, and a great, great, great broadcaster. And he told me for that story, he said the only player that I have ever met in my life who didn't have fear of the ball was Tony Conigliaro. And he got hit in the face. And go look at the pictures of the black eye that he had. Oh my
Ugh,
God, his
I
face
can't.
got destroyed. And he came back from that. And I think he hit like 36 homers in a season for the Angels. And Ken Harrelson told me he hit a home run. Like every home run he hit was on a ball up in the strike zone because he could see it with his back eye. But when the ball was down, with the front
You
eye
couldn't
being
catch it.
basically blind, he couldn't see it. So no matter what you hear about Tony Conigliaro, what a great young hitter he was, you can multiply it by 10. And that's how good he was. And what a career that ended as quickly as it did.
You know, Dad, we hear stories all the time of players taking, grounders. Eduardo Perez, right? Had vision problems. The late Ryan Miner,
Right.
as well,
Right.
who famously replaced Cal Ripken Jr. after his long streak. And Ryan Miner, may he rest in peace, was the manager of the Frederick Keys back when I interned there. Incredible. Was the first manager I ever got to work with when it came to being in minor league baseball. But I think it's understated, that when your eyes aren't working, a slight delay with a ball traveling that fast ends careers, makes things harder. I mean, Eduardo has said it a number of times. He just never was the player he thought he was going to be because
couldn't
his
see.
eyes couldn't
Right.
see. It's really sad to see that.
John Lester was a terrible hitting pitcher, Jeff. Terrible. And then all of a sudden, he started to get some hits. So I finally went to him and said, John, you hit a major league homer. You've gotten a bunch of hits lately. He goes, well, I can see now. He said, I didn't realize it. I was at the plate and I couldn't see. And I got my eyes checked. I got contact lenses, I think it was. And he became not a good hitting pitcher, but a way better hitting pitcher.
But better.
Way better. And he actually did some things in a game after going like one for his first 63 or something ridiculous like that. So, yeah, eyes are really important, especially when it comes to trying to hit a baseball.
And I'm sure every guy who faced John Lester, when they heard that, said, wait, you were throwing at me and you couldn't see?
Right. He could see home plate.
All right.
He just couldn't see. He could see
home.
He could see the catcher's mitt. He just couldn't see the baseball when it was coming in at 95 miles an hour. Okay, 3 cards in the bathroom, Jeff. I went down there this morning. Before I shoveled all that snow, I came up with Greg Harris. Greg Harris, I covered him with the Rangers. Greg Harris was a switch pitcher. He told me as a right-handed pitcher, he said, I can throw 80 miles an hour left-handed. And I said, I didn't know that. He started, and right there in spring training, he started throwing left-handed at 80 miles an hour. And finally, in 1995, the Expos let him pitch in a game right-handed and left-handed in the same inning. It was amazing that he could do that. And he had this glove, Jeff. It's like you can move the glove around and make it a left-hander's glove and a right-hander's glove. So Greg Harris, one of the very few guys who pitched left-handed and right-handed in a major league game. Number 2, Dave Kingman. How about a flashback on him? Back when he played, Jeff, he struck out a lot, hit for a low average, hit a ton of homers. He would be an even better player today because
I was going to say, it sounds like he's playing in 2026.
Right. But Dave Kingman in 1982, Jeff, he led the league in home runs with 37, and he batted .204 that year. And in 1982, Steve Carlton won the National League Cy Young Award and hit .218. So the Cy Young winner had a higher batting average that season than the home run champion from the National League. Pretty weird, huh?
Well, obviously will never happen again because our pitchers are no longer batting.
Right.
However, Well, I mean, there's Shohei. That's a different story. But, yeah, that's incredible. And I definitely think Dave Kingman could start on a major league team today, and those stats we wouldn't even be looking at him like they were in the 80s. You probably were looking at that saying, what is happening? You can't bat close to 200 and hit that many homers. Now it happens all the
Right,
time.
that's the way it goes. This one was a real surprise and a real pleasant surprise for me. Tim Jones. Now, Tim Jones did not have a very long major league career, but I'll never forget, Jeff, in 1994, there was no World Series because the work stoppage, the strike ended the World Series. So Sports Illustrated sent me to cover the AAA World Series between Charlotte and Richmond. So I'm in the Charlotte clubhouse and I'm walking through, and since there are a bunch of minor leaguers, I don't know a whole lot of people, but I walk past this room that is for players only. And I look in there and they're playing Jeopardy is on the television. And I just glanced, and poetry was the final Jeopardy category. And out of nowhere, this guy comes flying out, player screaming, putting his hands in the air. And I looked at Tim Jones, and said, did that guy just get the final Jeopardy answer correct in poetry? And Tim Jones looked at me. What a great guy. He laughed out loud and he goes, no, no, no. We're baseball players. That's not how the game is played. The way we play it is if you guess the final Jeopardy category, you win. So this guy said, I'm guessing it's going to be poetry. And he was right.
And it was.
But he didn't know that no one could get a poetry answer right. Oh, my gosh. That is so great. Yeah, Tim Jones, 3 cards in the bathroom. How about that?
Dad, I love it. And this has become such a popular segment on the show, so I hope we continue it through the regular season. Right. All right, Dad, let's wrap it with from Burley to Behemoth. We're counting down the best players from 56 to 99, and today we're on number 63.
Right, and there were actually some pretty good candidates here. Rafael Betancourt had a pretty darn good career as a relief pitcher. So did Sean Doolittle. I'll get to him in a minute, but I'm going to go, and this is very close voting. I'm going to go with Ryan Madsen, number 63, who, did some pretty darn good things, mostly for the Phillies. So I'm going to go with him as the greatest number 63. Although Sean Doolittle is one of my favorite people, Jeff. Really smart UVA guy. We used to joke that one spring, he was teammates with a pitcher named Tony Sipp, S-I-P-P. So we used to joke that, Sipp and Doolittle were on the same team. So, sounds like a pretty good day to me. Sipp and Doolittle, So that's Sean Doolittle. He's doing some really good things in baseball these days because he's wicked smart, and people should listen to him because he has a lot to offer. And in his prime, pretty darn good left-handed reliever.
Well, we are so excited for you to be along this journey for Is This a Great Game or What? Because come next week, we're going to have a very exciting announcement for everybody who either has been with us since day one when we started the show, or today is day one with us. Nothing will change for all of you listening, so don't worry about that, but it's exciting news that we're really ready to share with everybody. It's something we've been keeping under wraps for a bit, Dad. Bobby Valentine, thank you for creating the wrap because we've been keeping it under wraps right now. And next week we'll be able to tell everybody what's going on and what's been happening in the world of Is This a Great Game or What? And Dad, I know we're going to get more weather. My phone is telling me we've got Wednesday snow, we've got weekend snow. Are you ready to keep shoveling?
No, like I said, I'm going to Arizona on Thursday, so there will be and it's supposed to be 50 degrees here on Wednesday. I can't believe it's going to snow in Philly. Maybe I read that wrong.
Well, my shed was supposed to get delivered today, still not here, obviously. Next date is this Wednesday, and we're supposed to get snow. Probably not going to get it then. So, Dad, this shed has been, for me, going on a month.
Right.
5 weeks of waiting on delivery. I just don't even feel like it's going to happen. I already paid for it. It's sitting on a lot 5 miles from here, just waiting for it to come to my backyard.
How about Shed Long, Jeff?
Shed Long.
Second baseman, on our all like structure team, shed long. And
Yep.
that really fits what you're waiting for. A long time for the shed
Right.
to show up.
Speaking of waiting, probably hard to see. That's Mom calling right now, Dad. So I gotta go pick up your wife. My mother is calling. So let's wrap this right now. It's a family show, isn't
All
it,
right.
Dad? I don't know what she needs from me, but I'm gonna give her a call back so I don't
All right.
miss
I'll
it.
talk to you next week, Jeff. I'll talk to you before then. Talk to you later, okay?
All right, and thanks for listening. And as always, thanks for being a part of our family.